Hi, I'm James Dean, Managing Director and founder of HRC Online, and in this video we're going to do an assessment review for the Unit 5002, which is Evidence-Based Practice. Now, not a lot has changed in terms of the assessment. There's a few changes in terms of the number of examples you've got to give and a bit of phraseology, and I think the data tables have changed slightly as well. But what we'll do is we'll go through them. I will highlight some of the key things that I think you need to be aware of when working through this assessment, and just some of the things that you need to keep an eye out for and make sure that you do. Now, what I may also do is just a bit of an example as to how to do some data analysis within Excel and within some of the tables, but I'm not going to give any answers to the questions. So I'll show you how to do certain things within Excel if you're not comfortable with that, but at the same time that may be giving away too much, so CIPD may want me to remove that. So we'll see how we go with this. As always, when you prepare for any assessment, preparation for the task at the start of the assignment, you are encouraged to plan your assessment, work with your assessor where appropriate to agree milestones so they can help you monitor your progress. Within HRC Online, we use learning engagement mentors. They will work with you on a study plan so that you can try and finish in a particular time frame or within a particular deadline that you want. If you're doing this new module, the new 5002, great. If you're on the old one, you have probably until the end of June to get your assessment in, so time is of the essence. Refer to indicative content in the unit to guide and support your evidence. There is a very clear statement within this assessment stating that it wants citations, it wants references, it wants you to use multiple sources of information within this. Pay attention to how your evidence is presented. Remember, you are working in a people practice team, and to test out your acting skills, this has a little bit more of a scenario than the other two units that we've covered, but also ensure your evidence is generated for the assessment remains your own work. Now, because a lot of this is data interpretation as well as referencing particular citations and particular references and particular theories, making sure it's your own work is pretty much going to be one of the critical things that you need to be able to do, because if someone says, explain how you got to this, or explain why you know that, it's like explaining your working outs in maths. They want to see how you came to certain conclusions and what information you did, because you may have done it wrong, but you may still pass, because you may have done some calculations wrong, but this isn't a maths exam, this is a HR assessment. So, there's a couple of things to consider. So just make sure that you try and work that through. Now, section 1 is a report, and it has a bit of a scenario to it, so you can get into character. So your manager has just returned from their monthly senior management meeting where all department heads have been asked to present a report that showcases how they contribute to business performance. As someone who has experienced this evidence-based practice and used data analytics, she has asked you if you would produce the report for senior management that explains what evidence-based practice is and its relevance to the people professionals. She would also like you to include practical examples of types of data analysis that people practitioners use to gain insight into people practices. So for some reason, the manager doesn't want to do the work and they want you to do it for them. But it's good practice for your assessment, so let's go ahead anyway. In readiness for this, you are required to complete a report comprising of 2 sections. So let's go into section 1. Section 1 is a report. For this section 1, you are to produce a report that provides senior management team with knowledge and understanding of what evidence-based practice is and what approaches can be taken for effective critical thinking and decision making that ensure integrity is valued and upheld. You should relate to academic concepts, theories, and professional practice throughout your report to ensure that your work is critical and informed by using key academic texts, articles, and relevant publications. All cited references should be correctly acknowledged and presented in full bibliography at the end of your report. That second paragraph is the first time in the 3 new June assessments where that has been reinforced really clearly. So the clear indication to anyone marking this assessment is for someone to pass a section of this assessment, they have to ensure that they are using academic texts, articles, publications. There needs to be a full bibliography. They need to be talking about concepts and theories. This isn't just I'll answer this question, this is what I think. So they really have made sure that every single answer you give in this section 1 report needs a citation, needs a theory, and it needs to be in your bibliography as a reference. Now, section 1 has 7 questions, which is 2,900 words, which equates to 415 words per question. We always put that on our assessments because we think one of the ways to work smarter is to not overkill a particular word. Let's try and restrict yourself from the start so that you don't end up with question 1 and 20 words left. Let's try and work to 415 words per question. Plus or minus 10% is the CIPD word count policy. What they said recently in the markers meeting is if you break 10%, so if you go above by anything over than 10%, instantaneous fail. If you go below, you may pass, but it's not as thing, but there's not sufficient depth to answer this. You really will struggle to answer these questions with citations, references, and information if you're not using the word count in this. This one's probably going to be close to the line when you're trying to do all the different theories that go with it. So, task 1, question 1 to 3. Evaluate the concept of evidence-based practice and assess how approaches to evidence-based practice can be used to provide insight that supports sound decision-making across a range of people, practices, and organizational issues. Evaluate one appropriate analysis tool and one appropriate analysis method that might be applied by organizations to recognize and diagnose issues, challenges, and opportunities. And explain the main principles of critical thinking and describe how these might apply to your own ideas to assist objective and rational debate. Now, as always, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight some of the key elements of the question where we think people may miss. And we've highlighted these in green. So evaluate the concept, right? So you've already got part of the answer there. You need to find the concept of evidence-based practice and you need to evaluate that concept. Not just this is what it is, you're evaluating it. Because the verb can just send you off straight away. So you need to find a reference for it, citation for it. You need to then do your own evaluation. It's asking you for you because you're evaluating it. So that supports sound decision making across a range of people, practice, and organizational issues. So you need to evaluate it against organizational issues. So think about it from that perspective. Start with, get the concept, evaluate that concept, but evaluate that concept using organizational and people practice issues. The next question, evaluate one appropriate analysis tool and one appropriate analysis method. Yeah, so you've got to find one appropriate analysis tool when it comes to people practices. You've got to find one method. And the next one is explain the main principles of critical thinking. So again, not explaining what critical thinking is, explain the main principles of it and describe how these might apply to your own, right? So there needs to be an element of self in this and others' ideas. That's where your citations, your referencing, your information, that's where it all comes into play. Assist objective to rational debate. So go through the questions when you're answering them and make sure that you are answering them as described, because if you're not doing it right in this particular instance, because it's very, very clear, it wants citations, references, banks, explain the main principle. If you don't explain the main principles, if you just explain what critical thinking is, you've not answered the question. So really go through the question, highlight yourself, don't just take my video, go through it and go, right, have I answered this? Have I answered that? Break the question into its components and say, have I answered this? Have I answered that? And then take it and make subheadings. What are the main principles of critical thinking? How main principles might apply? My ideas, other evidence out there in the world. Break it down into its component parts and go forward from there. Now, questions 4 to 7 explain 3 decision-making processes that can be applied to ensure that effective outcomes are achieved. Assess 3 different ethical perspectives and explain how understanding these can be used to inform and influence moral decision-making. Appraise 2 different ways organizations measure financial and non-financial performance, providing 1 example for each. Explain how people practices add value to an organization and identify 2 methods that might be used to measure the impact of people professionals. This should be, and I say should be, this should be relatively simple, because when we look at what's highlighted, explain 3 decision-making processes. So There will be references, citations, and academic theory out there for decision-making processes. You need to pick 3 of them. 419 words, that is 125 words per one with a few wasted words. Assess 3 ethical perspectives. So again, you find 3 ethical perspectives, they're referenced, they're cited, they're input, you've done it correctly. Appraise, right? So evaluate, look at from multiple angles, 2 different ways organizations measure financial and non-financial performance. So you're appraising 2 methods for financial and non-financial. So that's already broken into 4 questions if you break it. So you're appraising 1 financial, 1 non-financial, and then another method, financial, non-financial, providing 1 example for each. So that's just another set. So if you think about, you're appraising ways organization, 2 different ways organizations measure it, and you're providing an example for each of them, that question is really, really going to be tight on words. So if you do have any spare words, 3.1 is a really, like, the way that question's broken down, it's almost into like 6 to 8 points. Make sure that you save some words for that question if that's the one that you're going to struggle with. Explain how people practices add value to organization. Identify 2 methods that might be used to measure the impact of people practices. So once again, look for an academic theory about what measures people practice, integrate it in there, go forward from there. So it's giving you all the answers. These questions give you the answers and the perfect solution, because pretty much everything it's asking you to do is find out what the academic reading is on decision-making processes. Pick your favorite 3 and explain how those 3 can be applied. Assess 3 ethical perspectives. Read it about ethical perspectives. Find 3 that connect with you and write how these can be applied. It really is giving you the answer within the question. And so what you'll be marked on this is, do you answer the question? Have you done enough research and reading to answer the question correctly? And have you fallen within the word count? It is, the questions 4 to 7 are so clear in terms of expectation and what they want from you, that as long as you break it down and you follow it to the letter of the law, you should be absolutely fine. But I appreciate this is sometimes really difficult to do, because you're reading it going, what do I do? What do I do? Well, you've been given numbers here, so just follow the numbers, follow the logic, write it out. Every single decision-making, like if it's 3 decision-making process 1, subheading, I have 125 words. Decision-making process 2, subheading, I have 125 words. I need a reference, a citation, and I need to put something in the bibliography. Bosh, bosh, bosh. You've created the answer for that. So I'm not going to go through the answers. I'm not going to give you examples of things you should be using. I'm just giving you the process to how to maximize your efficiency when going through these types of things, and making sure that you actively read the question correctly, because that is the only way that you can really go left here. Okay, so we move on. Section 2, quantitative and qualitative analysis review. Now, if you've not done quantitative and qualitative analysis before, basically qualitative is things like product reviews, focus groups, notes and observation. It's non-statistical based analysis. It's a collection of information, but it's not ever right or wrong. It's not yes or no. So if, for example, you then go to quantitative, you might have salaries, that's a fixed number. You might have the number of days someone's been off sick. You may have, it's very statistical. And we've done a video on what qualitative and quantitative analysis is, which I will put a bit of a call out here somewhere. It goes somewhere here on YouTube or something like that, so that you can watch it. It's a 3-minute video. It just explains what it is. But basically, it's wanting you to look at factual data and opinion data, so feedback surveys, things like that, against statistics like age range, date of birth, salary range. So take hard data and soft data and sort of merge it together into a report. That's kind of what it's asking you to do, but it's using words like qualitative and quantitative, and it's a bit thing. So section 2. For section 2, you are to provide a qualitative and quantitative analysis, review using 2 sets of data provided. Now, there's 2 sets of data within the assessment, so you should be able to get those. I'm not going to go through the bits of data. I am going to do pivot table example with you and sort of how I analyze data so that you've got some sort of guide to how you can pull it together, but I'm not going to go through these questions. So firstly, review the equality and diversity and inclusion salary data presented in table 1 and provide analysis of it. Show here. So the percentage of each gender by type, ethnicity by percentage by team, disability percentage in an organization, whole by team, salary difference across genders, etc., etc. Present your findings using appropriate diagrammatical forms that make justifiable recommendations based on your evaluations. They're just, I think they might have been playing a game of Scrabble with this, just trying to get as long a words in as possible, but basically just find a table to summarize your findings in the most appropriate way you possibly can. Now, this can feel really daunting because then you've got 2 sets of data, and if you don't do much data analysis in Excel or anything like that, then sometimes it can feel like it's a really big. So table 1 is an equality, diversity, and inclusion salary data range. Table 2 is feedback score from a recent employee survey on hybrid working practices. Now, if you think qualitative is product, services, and feedback, so it's non-statistical data. Table 2 is your qualitative. Table 1, equality, diversity, inclusion, and salary data, that's your statistical data. So that's your quantitative data. So it's broken into 2 ways. Now, what I'm going to do here is, so this is one of the tables. This is the data table, and I'm just going to quickly show you how I analyze Excel spreadsheets and how I build data together. I'm going to do it step by step so that you can follow this, and then you can answer the questions. I'm not going to answer any questions. Anyone at CIPD is watching this, I'm not going to answer the questions that they've been asked. I'm going to answer different questions that I've made up with the data. So first thing that I always do is, if you go here to where A is, the little down arrow pops up, highlight all of that, go to data, filter. That just allows me to filter the data if I so wish, female, male, non-binary. I can create, if I want to look at teams. So again, I can look at data, so I can challenge some assumptions by looking at the details of the data behind it. The next thing that I do is I create a pivot table, and it's not as scary as most people think it is, but if you've never created a pivot table before, here's a really simple way to do it. Press on a cell outside of the range, so you've got a load of space because pivot tables change in size and space and everything like that. Press here, press insert, and then press pivot table. Once again, get your arrow at A, all the way through to I, and press pivot table, and then press OK. We'll move across here to where the pivot table is, because all the data's here. So as you can see, all the headings here at the top on row 1 are now here. And if, for example, I want to work out what the average salary is for a disabled employee, what I will do is I will take salary, FTE, I will drag it down here. I will then take disability status, I will put that in the rows. So then you've got your disabled, but it doesn't look right. So what I will do here is, if you press on values, there's a little drop down, value field settings. I want the average. So I will press average, and then I will press number format. And I want it in accounting because I want to look at money and what the average salary is. And then I will say 2 decimal places, and I will press OK. So, and then I'll press OK again, and that will give me the average salary for a disabled and a non-disabled person. So that's how I've calculated the salary for those. If I want to add in additional filters, let's say I want to look at ethnicity, drop that into filters here, and then I can say, okay, well, I want to look at, I want to remove white variances from the average salary and see what the data says. And you can create different filters and columns and information that way. Now, if it disappears, don't worry. You just click back on one of the numbers, it pops back up again. Now, let's say, for example, I want to show that in a statistical graph. I highlight it. I press insert, recommended charts, and I pick a graph that I like the look of. I think a bar chart is suitable in this situation, and the bar chart comes up here. Now here I've got this horrible little blank, so I'll go to this little drop down, remove the word blank, and it disappears out of my table. So now I've created a pivot table where I can ask questions, and I can change, what I might want to do is, instead of doing the average salary, I might want to do press value field settings. I might want to do the sum. So the total amount of money spent, and that will tell me how much money has been spent on disabled salaries and non-disabled, and it will change the table. And then all I do is just copy that table and I put it in my assessment. And this is just how to quickly do a pivot table in a chart so that you can draw statistical analysis out of this. So if you're comfortable in pivot tables, great. If you're not, that's a really easy way to do it. It's a really easy way to sort of start to answer these questions. And I could answer every question on that list using this method. Just remember to pull it together and go forward from there. And then you take a screenshot, you take a copy, you paste it in your Word, and that's how you give your answers to your questions. Really simple, really easy, and a really good way to go forward with it. Okay. So let's go back to section 2. After you've gone through all your data, you've pulled all your graphs together and everything like that, you're then given section 2 questions. So these are questions 1 to 3. With reference to people practice issues, interpret analytical data using appropriate analysis methods and tools. So think about all the references, all the research, everything you've done in section 1. Now apply some of those to some of the data that you've found within the tables. Present key findings for stakeholders for people practice activities and initiatives. Again, your key findings, the key things you think they should be aware of, it's you interpreting the data. So there's an element of your key findings. This is what I think we should be looking at. Make justified recommendations based on an evaluation of the benefits, risk, and financial implications of potential solutions. So again, if you say we need to recruit more customer service, or we need to do more of this, this is how it could work. Now, section 2's got 1,000 words, 333 words per answer. That does not include the tables. The tables are not a part of your word count, but it will give you an indication as to the answer. So hopefully this makes you feel a little bit more confident in 5002. It is very different to some of the other units in terms of it's asking you to interpret and take data and create things that you may be not doing every single day. There is a video on qualitative and quantitative review that we've got on there. We've got a whole range of different sort of decision-making models and theories within our short 2-minute video clips if you need to watch those, if you're not getting those from what you need to see. So you'll find that all on our YouTube channel if you're looking to try and find some sort of decision-making tools or analysis or theory or anything that goes with that. So we've got all that there for you. But unlike some of the other assessments where it's asking you to interpret or it's asking you to sort of think about things and critically evaluate them, it's giving you the answers here. It's just asking you how do you know how to find information, reference information, present information in a consumable and manageable way that can go up, because that is what HR is a lot of the time. It's about finding a problem, finding others that have had that problem and what solutions they've found, and presenting it in a way to senior leaders where they can go, I understand the benefits and the drawbacks of each of these because of how you've presented the data and how you've given it back to us. I hope this has been helpful. This has been our 5002 assessment review. Best of luck if you're studying this unit at this moment in time. Take care, and we will catch you on the next one.